الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها المزمل قم الليل إلا قليلا نصفه أو انقص منه قليلا أو زد عليه ورتل القرآن ترتيلا إنا سنلقي عليك قولا ثقيلا إن ناشئة الليل هي أشد وطئا وأقوم قيلا إن لك في النهار سبحا طويلا واذكر اسم ربك وتبتل إليه تبتيلا رب المشرق والمغرب لا إله إلا هو فاتخذه وكيلا واصبر على ما يقولون واهجرهم هجرا جميلا وذرني والمكذبين أولي النعمة ومهلهم قليلا إن لدينا كالا وجحيما وطعاما ذا غصة وعذابا أليما يوم ترجف.
الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور انفسنا ومن سيئات اعمالنا اشهد ان لا اله الا الله وحده لا شريك له واشهد ان سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى اله وصحبه. Inshallah, today we'll go through 3 surahs from the Juz 29 because the surahs are short. And frankly, they self-explanatory. So it's probably better to do it in a tafsir of every ayah, but frankly, you understand it just by reading it. So since I focus only on the theme of the surah, without going through all of the ayat in it, all of the verses in it, so that's what I'm going to do. In Surat Al-Muzammil, the focus, actually, the main theme of it, because it came as an early surah, before the command came to the Prophet ﷺ to go to public with the da'wah. And in order to go public with the da'wah, you need to have preparation. You need to be prepared, spiritually and physically, and have a complete, basically unwavering trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And frankly, we all need this. So this surah, although it was relevant at that time, but frankly, it's still relevant to us. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instituted something. He said, if you do this, then that will develop this patience, resolve, spiritual, increase in your spirituality and so on. What is that thing is the night prayer. And that's why in this surah came in with a requirement to actually do as low, in fact, almost all night, stand for prayer. And reciting the Quran in the prayer, whatever verses that was revealed, small amount of ayat, slowly. That is the way to develop your inner strength, And this is something that we all have to reflect on it. So the primary method for preparation, for actually serious work in the da'wah issue, it is actually night prayers. And this is why the surah directly starts with Ya ayyuhal muzammil qum al-layla illa qalila. Oh, you are wrapped up, you're sleeping and covered, get up, rise up, and pray all night except a little bit, And then it continues, نصفه أو انقص منه قليلا, do half of it, or a little bit less, or a little bit more. ورتل القرآن ترتيلا, and recite the Quran in a distinct way, and it's slower way. Then why? إنا سنلقي عليك قولا ثقيلا. We are going now to send down to you a weighty message to develop, to deliver. إن ناشئة الليل هي أشد وطئا وأقوم قيلا. That the rising at the night for prayer is more effective for purifying the self, and more suitable for understanding the Quran, to the words of the Quran. Now you can say, okay, if they stay all night or half of the night doing the prayer, is that means during the day they are going to sleep? The answer is no. إن لك في النهار سبحا طويلا, that during the day you have to keep busy for a long time. You are going to work. Praying at night doesn't mean you are going to basically relax during the day. That doesn't happen. Then directly comes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam the message, and anybody involved in this da'wah, that if you are going to deliver the message, you have to be patient, because people are not going to accept what you tell them easily. Will reject it, will fight you, will boycott you. So how is the solution? People who are abusive, leave them alone and part with them. Don't engage with them. But in the same time, you have to have patience. واصبر على ما يقولون وهجرهم هجرا جميلا. Bear patient what they say, they're just saying, وهجرهم هجرا جميلا, and part with them in a beautiful manner. Now, how about all of these abusive people? What do you do with them? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, leave them to me. وذرني والمكذبين أولي النعمة ومهلهم قليلا إن لدينا أنكالا وجحيما وطعاما ذا غصة وعذابا أليما. And then leave to me those who deny this truth. And who are people who's at that time and always the people who has a lot of money, and give them, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them respite, give them time, And then what we have prepared for them, we have prepared for them chains, and we prepared for them blazing fire. And then food that chokes and agonizing torment to store for them. So leave this to me. Don't don't ignore them, and leave them. I'll take care of them. Then the surah comes at the end and acknowledge that not everybody is going to, people have to go to work, people are sick and so on. Then they cannot spend the whole night praying or half of the night praying. Then Allah subhanahu comes and lighten the load on the Muslim a little bit in this regard. But it still didn't prevent it. They still have to do it at that time. إن ربك يعلم أنك تقوم أدنى من ثلثي الليل ونصفه وثلثه وطائفة من الذين معك. That means the Prophet ﷺ was doing, and also to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say, indeed your Lord is well aware that you spend nearly 2/3 of the night at prayer. Sometime half of it, sometime third, and sometime some of your followers also pray with you. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say, Allah values the night and the day, and He know that you will not be able to keep doing this, in a regular way. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say, if that is the case, فَقْرَأُوا مَا تَيَسَّرَ مِنْهُ. Still pray, but when you pray, read as you can, as easy for you as you can. And Allah says that there is some of you is going to be sick. Why Allah lighten the load? Because some of you sick, some of them will be going for businesses, يضربون في الأرض يبتغون من فضل الله, and some of them are fighting for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore Allah emphasized that you have to read as much as it's easy for you, but keep the prayer, pay the zakah, and give a charity, advance a good loan to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whatever good you send ahead of yourself, you will find it with Allah better and greater. Whatever you do in this life, it is Allah store it for you and will give you reward for it far better than what you have done. And then the surah ends, وَاسْتَغْفِرُ اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. And always seek forgiveness from Allah. Indeed, Allah is all forgiving, most merciful. And this is what happened. Okay, we know that this was the early part of the Risala, or the Prophet ﷺ. And the 5 prayer, the obligatory prayer wasn't prescribed yet. So when the obligatory prayer came, then with the believer, the Prophet ﷺ never, the night prayer, the Prophet ﷺ did it all the time. That's what even Salat al-Tarawih that we do it, he is exactly the same Salah. We don't call it Tarawih, it was Tahajjud. The same Salah that the Prophet do it all year, which is the 8 rak'ahs and the 3 witr and so on, the 11. But obviously he was raising a long verses. We call it Tarawih because we shortened the ayat, extended the time, and give break in between. Tarawih means for rest. But the Prophet ﷺ did it all the time. But it became a voluntary prayers. It's not an obligatory prayers. But the companion, even when these obligatory prayer came, they never stopped the night prayers because it was the objective of the night prayer. The night prayer is the one that strengthen your faith, strengthen your spirituality, it give you patience, and so on. So, and one example was the company. It does demonstrate that the way they do it. Sayyidina Umar, who was a Khalifa at that time, and obviously here said, this is a trouble with it. You get people like have a small state, and now they are considered kings and emirs and all of that stuff. Look at all of the Middle East. Sayyidina Umar used to run an empire. Used to run the whole Sham, Iraq, Arabia, Egypt, Iran. I mean, this was a real rural here. Look how big of a land he controls, But he still was doing the prayer. So Azerbaijan, so they said one time a governor from Azerbaijan came to him to visit him, but he arrived late at night. So he didn't want to go knock his door in his house to meet him. He said that man must be sleeping. So he went, anybody actually used to arrive, they always go to the masjid first. You arrive to Medina, go to the masjid. So he went to the masjid and saw this man was standing praying and was making this dua, oh my Lord, if you have accepted my repentance, did you accept, if you have accepted my repentance, let me rejoice. And if you have not accepted it, let me console myself. I feel so miserable in this regard. Then the man, the governor of Azerbaijan, asked him, who are you, staying at night in the masjid, doing prayer and doing this dua? And he said, I'm Umar, Khalifat al-Mu'mineen. And he said, wait a minute, I thought you would be sleeping. Otherwise, I didn't want to go to your house because I thought you were sleeping. And Umar responded to this, which is an interesting one. I'll read it in Arabic for those who are. إني إن نمت ليلي كله أضعت نفسي أمام ربي وإن نمت نهاري أضعت رعيتي. He said, if I sleep all night, I will neglect my duty toward my Lord. And if I sleep during the day, I will neglect the duty to my people. So that's why the night prayer doesn't mean you neglect what is your responsibility during the day, in this regard. One thing which I added something in the appendix, which probably all of you know it, but it just I thought we'll add it because a lot of time you set your clock at like half an hour before. You said, okay, I'll pray. Actually, if you get up almost a half an hour before the Fajr, you can actually pray 8 rak'ahs and the witr too, because when every page in the Quran takes about a minute. So you can actually do this. But the trouble with it, it's always sleeping. So I put this, the night prayer and the 40% rule. You probably all know this 40% rule because I think the Imam in last Friday mentioned this. 40% rule, they said, if your mind urges you to quit, due exhaustion, stress, mental fatigue, you are only used 40% of your potential. Then you still have 60% of your potential. So you have to push yourself. And if you push yourself, you will basically, you remove this blockage of your mental block and and the physical limit that you think it's a physical limitation. And people do it if you're running or doing things, you feel so tired and you cannot go forward, but if you continue. So I said before the Fajr, actually you can do that. If you set your alarm and the alarm comes on, you will feel that I cannot get up from the bed. So what they said, this is what your mind resisting, doesn't want to get you up. Then they said, just think about that 40%. No, I'm not tired actually. It is just, I think I am tired. Then the best way to do it is just as you wake up, because the alarm comes, you wake up. Just to say, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, or do a little bit tasbih 5-6 times, and then you will find some energy and get up, and you will be able to do it. Because all of the prayers, the worst sometimes, most of the time you get so tired is before the Isha prayer too. Wake up in the Fajr and before the Isha prayer, you feel so tired. If you don't push yourself a little bit, you can actually miss both. Well, you don't miss the Isha because you can wake up before that.
الرحمن الرحيم يا المدثر قم فأنذر وربك فكبر وثيابك فطهر والرجز فاهجر ولا تمنن تستكثر ولربك فاصبر فإذا نقر في الناقور فذلك يومئذ يوم عسير على الكافرين غير يسير ذرني ومن خلقت وحيدا وجعلت له مالا ممدودا وبنين شهودا ومهدت له تمهيدا ثم يطمع أن أزيد كلا إنه كان لآياتنا عنيدا سأرهقه صعودا إنه فكر وقدر فقتل كيف قدر ثم قتل كيف قدر ثم نظر ثم عبس وبسر ثم أدبر واستكبر فقال إن هذا إلا سحر يؤثر إن هذا إلا قول البشر سأصليه سقر وما أدراك ما سقر لا تبقي ولا تذر لواحة للبشر عليها 19
We said that Surah Al-Muzammil is the intention of it, the command of the night prayer is to basically build this spiritual strength and develop patience. Then directly comes the Surah Al-Muddathir. Surah Al-Muddathir now started delivering the message. Now get up and deliver the message. So, and in order to deliver the message, and emphasize actually not only internal purification, but also outward presentation. If you are going to go deliver a message of Islam to somebody, you cannot go frankly in a way you are not looking impressive to him. You have to dress properly. You have to smell nicely to do this, because there is already a barrier that exists. So don't make yourself an additional barrier to that person. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say, Ya ayyuhal muddathir, the one also you're sleeping, you're wrapped up in your cloth. Qum fa'anzir, stand up and now warn the people or deliver them the message. And proclaim وَرَبِّكَ فَكَبِّرْ, and proclaim the greatness of your Lord. And then وَثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِّرْ, purify your clothing. Clean your clothing too. وَالرِّجْزَ فَاهْجُرْ, and then avoid all impurities, because now you are going to serve as a role model for everyone. Remember this ayat, you can say it's related to the Prophet, actually related to anyone, because it's a command for everyone in this case. وَلَا تَمْنُنْ تَسْتَكْثِرْ. This is a very, and don't do favor to other people expecting some return. So if you are going to deliver the da'wah, give a talk, don't expect a return for what you're giving. You're delivering the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your reward comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is actually comes a big issue. That's why you find the early scholars never took salaries for their job, for delivering the message or teaching or anything like this. So, وَلِرَبِّكَ فَاصْبِرْ, and be patient, because there is not going to be an easy life. If you start doing this type of work, you get a lot of resistance. Then the surah moves after this directly to warn about the day of judgment. And to talk about فَإِذَا نُقْرَ فِي النَّاقُورِ, and when the trumpet sound, this day will be a difficult day. For whom? عَلَى الْكَافِرِينَ غَيْرُ يَسِيرٍ. For us is not easy for the disbeliever. When the trumpet comes, that's a difficult time for the disbeliever. Then also Allah described hellfire. I'm not going to go through the ayat for the hellfire, but so talk about a specific person. Talk about anybody who reject, who stand you delivering the message, who's standing against you and trying to badmouth you or say things about your message and so on. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say, get about him. سَأُصْلِيهِ سَقْرٍ. I am going to throw him in the hellfire. And Allah used the word Saqar. Saqar is a name and said, وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا سَقَرَ, and what made you know what is Saqar is. I remember last time we said, if you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say, مَا أَدْرَاكَ وَمَا يُدْرِيكَ. If say مَا أَدْرَاك, Allah will give the definition. If say مَا يُدْرِيكَ, you will never know the answer, you know. وَمَا يُدْرِيكَ لَعَلَّ السَّاعَةَ تَكُونُ قَرِيبًا, for example. When the day of judgment will come, يُدْرِيك, not مَا أَدْرَاك. فهو said وما أدراك ما سخر, and then Allah described لا تبقي ولا تذر, that it doesn't spare nothing and leaves nothing. It scorches the flesh of the human, appointed, and then here is the issues, appointed on it 19 angels. So Allah subhanahu states that there is 19 angels on the hellfire as guarding the hellfire. Then before I go to the 19, this, when you look at the books of tafsir, they tell you that this ayat was related to an action by al-Walid ibn al-Mughira, who was a chief of Bani Makhzum, a clan because he is the one did said a lot of things. The surah talk about it. But actually, I always said we made a big mistake. Well, I don't know, make mistakes, but we say asbabun nuzul, the reasons for revelation. I said, there is no reason for revelation because the Quran existed before even human were existed. So it is the occasion of the revelation, because when the revelation comes at a time when an incident happened, then it becomes an example for us. So here is, yes, it will happen, the revelation, it happened during the occasion of the action of this Al-Walid ibn al-Mughira, but it's an example for anybody who behave like him. It will apply to him. Sa'uslihi saqar. You're delivering somebody start, basically attacking you, then that verse applies to him. And number 19 is an interesting number. So I put it in the appendix. I put something on it. I'm not going to discuss in detail. I'll just mention a few things in it, but you can read it in the appendix because people have spent a lot of time actually studying it, and I'm sure you have, but I probably put something in it you might have not heard it before. Then the surah emphasizes also the personal accountability and why those people who will be thrown in hellfire. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when the people enter in the hellfire, they will say, why, who brought you to the hellfire? So, and people will answer. And look at this, because when the people answer for the hellfire, this is element that will be a cause for problem for anybody. ما سلككم في سقر, what brought you to the hellfire? So they will say, those people who are in the hell now will answer, لم نكن من المصلين, we did not pray. Is an interesting, actually, if you look at this, obviously you directly think about it, these are the kuffar that disbelieve in Allah and so on, okay? But the disbelief in Allah, is their problem is not praying as a first one? Or this can also look at it for even the Muslims who claim something, but their behavior, let's see what is this, does it apply to us if we have this issue with it? First of all, لم نكن من المصلين, we did not pray. Okay, and this is why prayer is the most important and very difficult to do. The second one, وَلَمْ نَكُنْ نُطْعِمُ الْمِسْكِينَ, they have no humanity, they have no mercy toward the poor people. We did not, feed the poor. وَكُنَّا نَخُوضُ مَعَ الْقَاعِدِينَ, and we were indulged in vain talks and waste of time with everybody. وَكُنَّا نُكَذِّبُ بِيَوْمِ الدِّينِ, and we used to deny the day of judgment. Does any Muslim deny the day of judgment? No. By word, by mouth. But do we deny it by actions? Our action reflect? Frankly, you look at this world today, the Muslim today, do you think those people actually believe there is a judgment by what they do or what they don't do? No, but think seriously. Would you, if you really believe that you are being judged when you see somebody being slaughtered and you're watching him and you have the capability to do something and don't do it, do you believe you are going to have face Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Or you are afraid, you are not afraid from Allah, You are afraid from another human being. That is, so we can say, yeah, we believe in the day of judgment, but what does our action do? That's why even people, they tell you, if a person come and claim he's an atheist, yeah, people come and kids sometime, even Muslim kids come and say, oh, I don't believe, and so on. Look at their actions. If you do not believe, or somebody who believes that everything is predestined, that Allah subhanahu forces me to do this, look at his actions. Does his action consistent with what he is saying or not? So action reflect what is the inside of you. So so Allah subhanahu tell us this. And the surah then concludes by what is really the divine message. Why Allah sent the Quran for? كلا إنها تذكرة فمن شاء, the Quran is a reminder for you. And then فمن شاء ذكر, whoever wishes, remember. وما يذكرون إلا ما شاء الله وأهل التقوى وأهل المغفرة. And then they will only heed unless Allah will, and He is the only one worthy of being heeded, and He is the one worthy of granting forgiveness. I said I did include into the number 19, and the number 19, it's an interesting verse actually in the Quran, and why people spend a lot of time importance to it, because the implication of it. If you look at the verses in which is verse actually 31 in the surah, the key point of it is this. First of all, this is the first verse revealed to the Prophet ﷺ talk about the people of the book, about the Ahlul Kitab. And also it is the first verse that was the first ayah that was revealed. There's many numbers in the Quran, okay? There is 30 numbers actually. Let me see here. There's 38 numbers in the Quran. There is 7, there is 40, and so on. There is actually 30 of them are whole numbers, and 8 of them are fractions. Where is a fraction comes from? Miras. 1/8, 1/6, and so on, 1/4. So all of them. I asked you this question before. Why the Arabs have to look for a mathematical system, a numbering system that will allow them the way we said this is the Arabic numerals. If you look at the Greek numbers, the Greek number, the I and V and X and so on. How do you write fractions? How you add fractions using it? You can't actually, But now with this decimal point and the fraction, the number that we use now, it is actually you can do mathematics, because how you add all of 1/6, 1/8, 1/4, and so on. So anyway, but this ayah is the first ayah also when Allah mentioned a number, which is number 19. Also, Allah mentioned 4 purposes for this number. The one is a test for the disbelievers. That when they look, number 19 is a test, for the believer. فتنة للذين كفروا وليستيقن الذين أوتوا الكتاب ويزداد الذين آمنوا إيمان. That is a test for the believer. It will provide certainty to the people of the book that this Quran is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and strengthen the faith of the believer and remove doubts from the hearts. Okay, we read the ayah, we said the number 19. Did it increase our belief? Forget about the disbeliever in the people of the book. It must have a major significance in this regard. And then it's a warning for those who dismiss the number due to spiritual disease. It warns those people who ignore the number too, and affirm that only Allah knows the extent of His forces, just by this number 19. So the number 19, it seems, has a lot of relevance, to it. So you can think about it. I wrote something about it, but I don't want to take so much time because it will distract you from the ayah. But one thing, people have done this mathematical and computer and mathematical equation and so on. I said, but not everybody can validate it. It must have something simple enough that people will actually reflect to it. And people actually looked at it, because we said there is number 19s for the in the gates of hell. How many gates on hell? 8. 8. What's 19? No, it's not 8. Yeah. 7. Yeah. Divide 19 by 7. Let's see. What's the number? You know, you answer 2.7. It's an E, Euler number. Euler number, which is used in mathematics and physics all the time. In fact, for financial, yeah, it's E. So it's a critical number, but even in this doesn't mean anything because frankly, not everybody will reflect on it. But so think about it anyway, because as I told you, I truly believe that all of us, this Quran, you know, I'm going to repeat what I said yesterday. I truly believe we deprive ourselves from using our profession and discipline to understand the ayat in the Quran that relevant to us. The Quran includes so many information. I asked this question before. If you think about it, why Allah revealed the Quran? Any serious book that you read, the first question you ask yourself is, what is the purpose of the book? Would you read any book without trying to get a benefit from it? Unless you read a story or a novel or something. But any serious book, any serious person who study wants to understand the objective of the book, the purpose of the book. What is the purpose of the book and what is the purpose of the Quran? It is answering to a request we ask. Allah subhanahu in Surah Al-Fatiha said, Ihdina Surats Al-MUZZAMMIL. We're seeking guidance. We came here on earth lost. We don't know what to do. Guide us. Then Allah subhanahu come and said, this book is a guidance for you. But guidance to what? Guidance to what? Everybody will say, oh, guidance to the hereafter, so we go to heaven. Are you going to go to the heaven without passing through by this life? You have to go through this life first before you go to heaven. So it must be guidance to be basically serve a role in this life. What Allah subhanahu say about the Muslims? وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ خَيْرَ أُمَّةٍ أُخْرِجَتْ لِلنَّاسِ. We made you the best nation that ever created, that brought forth to people. Okay. Are we best nation? Well, then the Quran has to give us guidance to be the best nation. If we are not the best nation, then the Quran didn't serve us because we never used it. Now, when I frankly, remember I used to told you this same time. I said, if anybody comes to me and tell me he cannot understand the Quran, I said he's saying one of two things. One, that he have cheated in all his exams, particularly if a person has high school. Why? Because there is no way you tell me you study mathematics book, chemistry book, biology book, history book, geography book, you just name it, and you all of these books, 400 or 500 pages, and the Quran 300 pages, and you cannot understand. Or you're saying something even worse, that Allah could not express himself in a language that's so easy for you to understand, knowing that you don't know Arabic, that the majority of the people do not know Arabic. You're doing, you're making a very dangerous claim to Allah subhanahu, and therefore you need somebody to explain it to you. That idea, I think I found it to me, because I probably made that statement to you before. There is something wrong with it, because I said the issue actually in the Quran, there is verses in it which is very clear that talk about the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, about the action, what commands we have, what we call it Aqidah and the Sharia. It's about 200 verses and very clear in any language you can translate. But there is a lot of over 5,000 verses that talks about biology, talk about chemistry, talk about history, talk about astronomy, talk about mathematics, talk about all of these laws, talk about everything. All of these ayat, what we call it sometimes, mutashabihat. Allah subhanahu put this ayat in a language that does not confuse people. Because if I come in ayat that talk about time physics, for example, and talk about the general relativity, most of the people up there will understand the general relativity and the relativity of time and so on. They wouldn't understand. Because therefore the ayat have to come to be flexible enough to allow people come later generation who specialize in such subject to capture it. And therefore in the Quran, there is ayat that the engineer can benefit from it. The sciences can benefit from it, but he is the only one can develop it. Why? Because if you are going to develop a civilization, you need all of the disciplines. That is why the Quran never speak about individual guidance. When we even read the Fatiha, do we say, Ihdina Surat al-Mustaqim, guide me? Or we say, Ihdina, guide us? Why? Because your guidance by developing, excelling, taking advantage of the Quran to develop the technology, the science, the information that belong to your discipline will help me. I will exceed in something, I excel in something, you excel in something, and these ayat have to come together. That's why the Quran encompasses so many technologies, not in as a manual, but as a hint, and you take advantage of it. You know, I throw to you in, and I'm going to throw another one about this separation between the verses. I'm telling you, it is require a person who is excel in neurology, in data analysis, in artificial intelligence to understand even the Quran or take the ayat from the Quran and develop this technology. But we don't, because the engineer cannot understand, the biologist doesn't want to read it to understand it. No, the medical doctor does not want to read it because he said, well, I'm not a special, I didn't go to the Medina or Azhar. And that's why I said the Quran actually is a book for everybody to put in it. Why? To develop the greatest civilization that came to mankind. Yes, talk about moralities, talk about laws, and so on. It bothered me actually, because I found that many people here are business people, particularly the Pakistanis, and they come to a sheikh who never involved in business, who never worked in building a company, and they ask him, can I do this business or not? Is it halal or haram? I said, are you kidding me? The guy never did this. How we can understand the financial transaction? You have studied finances, you study economics, you get in business, you know how to work with the banks. Is the Quran has the ayat that related to you and the hadith that related to you, you can put it in 2 pages. Read it, understand it, use your heart, and Allah will teach you, because the first ayah in the Quran tell us what? This book will give guidance to only one group of people. Those people who have taqwa. If you don't have taqwa, you are going to manipulate the ayat for your benefits. Therefore, work in your taqwa first. And when I'm repeating myself, but if anybody didn't listen to me before, if you did not figure out the definition of the taqwa in the Quran, you don't know how to improve your taqwa. Because Allah defined it. And the sad part, I ask anybody what's a taqwa? They said fear of Allah. Okay? I said, okay, what is the after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kitab hudan lil muttaqin, this book has guidance for those. What did Allah say? He said, those who fear Allah. Show me the ayah that say the taqwa equivalent to fear Allah. Allah define it in details in so many ayat. Assemble it, and if you have taqwa or you don't have taqwa. If you have taqwa, Allah will never misguide you, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَيُعَلِّمْكُمُ اللَّهُ. If you have taqwa of Allah, Allah will teach you. And if you believe me, if you study the Quran and we have a taqwa, Allah will give you a hint to the technologies that He put in, that you can excel and do inventions and development and so. We have an ayah of the iron. I was telling Brother Jafar yesterday, I said, look, define for us nanotechnology in the Quran. Allah must have put a hint in it. Any technology, AI, we find it in the Quran. It has to be in it. But we don't. Why? Because we are afraid to look at it and focus, take our discipline to understand it. Frankly, just to go to the Quran and read it this way, there is many ayah that you will not understand. You don't understand because it's not your discipline. But there is some ayat will hit you, and I understand this. If Allah talk about the iron, talk about how to make iron, like Sayyidina Dawood. If Allah talk about numbering system, one thing, I tell you, if you were a guy who really came in with a computer science, and then you read the ayah, one ayah, that says in the book that Allah will give you, this book is a book of numbers. Your record is a book of numbers. Kitabun marqum. a digitized book. Wouldn't, if you read the Quran, would you ask yourself, how can, if, because look, about 50 years ago, something, because we have the computer and we have the memory stick, and you said, how come, a book, how big is this book that will record all my actions, how, and then Allah will give it to me, take it in my right hand or take it in my left hand, and take it from my, people will take it from their, no, I'll take it from right hand. I hope nobody will take it from her left hand or the back. But even, can you hold a book, include all of the record in one hand? You can't. There is, Allah didn't give us a hint and said, this is a book, is a kitabun marqum, a digitized book. What is a digitized book means? Now we know it. Because all of the record that we have, you take the whole encyclopedia, your whole library, and put it in one memory stick. All what it is a digitized book. And so if a Muslim is really working and look at this and folks sit in this and said, this must mean something. I have to discover something. And so many others, So anyway, so as far as number 9, it is also something has a benefit for us. Let's go now to Surat Al-Muddathir, and I'll probably put another picture for you here, because it is so important. You know why I put this in? Because we talked about it before. Did anybody, when he read the Quran, ask himself, those people whom Allah talk about, Sayyidina Sulaiman, Dawood, Nuh, Fir'aun, didn't speak Arabic. So how did Allah translate what they said in a perfect Arabic language? How did he do it? We try, I make a translation here in English, and what I translate how I understood the verse. Okay, did Allah translate their words, their meaning, or word by word? Because if you translate word by word, it doesn't, for a different language, it doesn't work out. So how? So I throw these things to you, because if you ask this question, you directly will figure out technology that people working on it now, if Muslims have really seriously looked at it this way. So
الرحمن الرحيم لا أقسم بيوم القيامة ولا أقسم بالنفس اللوامة أيحسب الإنسان أن لن نجمع عظامه بلى قادرين على أن نسوي بنانه بل يريد الإنسان ليفجر أمامه يسأل أيان يوم القيامة فإذا برق البصر وخسف القمر وجمع الشمس والقمر يقول الإنسان يومئذ أين المفر كلا لا وزر إلى ربك يومئذ المستقر ينبأ الإنسان يومئذ بما قدم وأخر بل الإنسان على نفسه بصيرة ولو ألقى معاذيره لا تحرك.
now move to Surah Al-QYAMMAH. And what is the one, we talked about it in the other ones, people have rejected the day of judgment, the resurrection. How are we going to be recreated after we die and become bones and so on? And this surah addressed this point, because that is always was a challenge for everybody who reject. In fact, actually, if you think about all of the article of belief, the one that all of the other can be derived from it logically is the Yawm al-Qiyamah, is the day of judgment. Because if you know there is going to be a resurrection, then you know that there is an authority to judge you based on the resurrection. But why are you getting up? Because to be judged. And if you are going to be judged, this authority have to give you a message what is right and what is wrong. And therefore you automatically will believe in the books and the messengers. And then you might be able to think about it, well, but who's going to keep the record? Then you might think there must be another forces exist around here. So suddenly you think about the angel. The only thing you cannot derive is the rituals. How are you going to pray? But logically, if you believe in the day of judgment, you probably can drive everything else, moralities and everything else. So that's why people used to always reject it. Reject it, why? Because if you know there is accountability, then in that case, it's going to put constraint in you. And if you want to be free, do whatever please yourself, you don't want accountability, you know. So this surah comes in as an emphasize this, focus in those people who rejected about this is going to happen. There is no doubt about it, you know. So don't let them be fools about it. And then Allah come and presented an argument. How do you present to those people who rejected the day of judgment about why it's so easy for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to recreate you again? So the surah started, فَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِيَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ, and make an oath by this to tell you directly, if Allah make an oath with it, that is a certain event is going to happen. So there's no doubt about it. And then comes in, and because people will reject, so how can we do this? This bones is going to become alive again. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes and addresses it. أَيَحْسَبُ الْإِنسَانُ أَلَّا نَجْمَعَ عِظَامَهُ? Do you think that man, that, you know, think that we are not going to be able to assemble his bones? And then Allah said, بَلَا قَادِرِينَ عَلَى أَن نُسَوِّيَ بَنَانَ. In fact, we are able to make whole his, very fingerprint. I want to, who is that person who discovered that we are different in fingerprints? Is a Muslim? I mean, believe me, isn't that the same thing I have? You know, if you are, now we look at it and take it, okay, yeah, we know that we go put your fingerprint and everybody's unique around the world with his fingerprint. But the verse is very clear. Why a Muslim didn't go and look for it and identify how you do it, identification system, for example, subhanAllah. So that's what I'm saying. If you get somebody who, because there is a lot of people focus in study the Quran in the language, in the miracle of the language and articulation and so on. This is not for everybody, frankly. You cannot relate to it, but at least to contribute to the Quran from your own discipline. Okay? Did you find out who found Brother Shams? Probably okay, don't worry, we'll check it later, Brother Shams. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us this, that people, we are going to be able to assemble his bone, not only his bones, but also are going to assemble his fingerprint. Bala yuridu al-insanu. And then here is why people reject. Why they, because this ayah actually has two tafsirs in it, but the majority of the tafsir, بل يريد الإنسان ليفجر أمامه, يفجر أمامه, that he deny what is coming ahead. Or ليفجر أمامه, he basically wants to transgress, to do fujur in this regard. Whatever the two meaning is the same thing. But this ayah affirms that yes, Allah will create you again. And then the surah then shifts actually the day of judgment, and when every person have to testify upon himself. And we talked about this so many in the ayat, other ayat came in, that everybody have to testify on himself. Because it's an interesting part that how Allah subhanahu, people at this day of judgment, if you give them the record, this is not mine. The angel will testify. He said, no, they made a mistake. So how are you going to implement the justice? Because the implement the justice, have a person have to testify against himself. So if Allah subhanahu will let your hand speak, your eyes speak, your foot speak, and so on, your skin speaks. But when, that's why Allah subhanahu, يُنَبَّأُ الْإِنسَانِ يَوْمَئِذٍ, he said, on that day of judgment, everyone will be told, what he will be told, what he have put forward and what he put last. Every action you have done from day you held accountable until you die, all of the action will be there. بَلِ الْإِنسَانُ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ بَصِيرًا. On that truly man is have a witness against himself on that day. وَلَوْ أَلْقَى مَعَذِيرًا. No excuse, no matter how excuses he much give. There is no excuses now. And frankly, there is the worst excuse to say such and such told me this. That will not be accepted. As long as you have a brain, you are responsible for it. If you can listen, but at the end of the day, you filter the information, accept what you believe in, and reject everything else, because you are going to be held accountable for your own actions. Then comes in, and I made it in red because I'll tell you, لا تحرك به لسانك تعجل. Let's look at the context here. The context is this talking about a person who's standing now in front and be judged, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that you cannot give any excuses. His record is presented to him, and he said, لا تحرك به لسانك تعجل. So people, the record is being read to him. And they said, they said basically, we don't move your tongue and receive it in a hurry. Don't to try to figure out what is the next, what we are telling you. إن علينا جمعه وقرآنه. It is our responsibility is to actually collect it and read it for you. When we read it, فإذا قرأناه فاتبع قرآنه. When we read it, listen, follow our reading, what we are reciting to you. ثم إن علينا بيانه, and then we will have responsibility of explaining to and make it clear. Remember, I did it here in the context of that this discussion with somebody whose record is being read to him in the day of judgment. But there is another tafsir for it. What is the tafsir? They take this last part, which I said, لا تحرك بلسانك. They said the revelation when it came to the Prophet ﷺ used to try to repeat it so he wouldn't forget it. Then the ayah in this ayah said, no, we are the one responsible for assembling it and then we're reciting it. So don't worry about it. We are going to preserve it for you. And we are going to explain it also to you. So the two tafsirs, exist, or the common tafsir that this ayat talk about to address the Prophet ﷺ. But frankly, I'm looking at it from the context of the ayat, from the description. It seems like it is. There is another ayat in the Quran that talk the Prophet ﷺ that we are the one who's going to preserve it. Don't worry about it, memorizing it. But anyway, this you can read it and figure out which one you can feel comfortable with it. And whatever definition, whatever explanation you use, it doesn't really going to impact your belief. It's not an article of belief or anything in this regard. It's just becoming intellectual exercise. Then the surah actually give us now a person who, died, but he's denying the truth. He's in a deathbed now. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described this. كَلَّا إِذَا بَلَغَتِ التَّرَاقِ. That when the soul now reaches the color box, the person is dying now. And then وَقِيلَ مَنْ رَاقٍ, and people around him will say, could anybody come and heal him? Somebody can heal. He's sick. He feels that the soul is coming out at the time of this. وَظَنَّ أَنَّهُ الْفِرَاقُ, when now he knew that he is leaving. وَالْتَفَّتِ السَّاقُ بِالسَّاقِ, and the legs will be intertwined together. إِلَى رَبِّكَ يَوْمَئِذٍ الْمَسَاقُ, and it will be said to him on that, now this day you will be driven to your Lord that you have been denying all the time, and you think you are not going to meet him. So, can anybody tell me a word here that وَظَنَّ أَنَّهُ الْفِرَاقُ? Is he, and then I would ظن, as a doubt, doubt in it. You remember what I defined, what is the ظن means, the word ظن and shak and ilm and so on. Because sometimes we have this issue about, Allah tests you to لِيَعْلَمْ. Allah tests you so he would know. I said, wait a minute, Allah knows everything. Why you have to test me? So it's becoming all definition of the words. And the people who ظنوا أنهم يلاقوا ربهم, believer, they have ظن that they will meet their Lord. And we said the ظن, just as a reminder, if anybody listen to it, the definition of ظن, the word ظن, if you really look at it translated, you look and say, put ظن in English and what's the translation, it becomes doubt, But ظن means you believe in something without materialistic proof for it. So when we come and say we believe in the day of judgment, this is based on ظن? The word to use ظن? Yes, because we don't have a materialistic proof on it. Ilm means you develop a materialistic proof. So when we say ظن, unless you are in it, you don't have a materialistic proof. And this is why if you look, when Allah ya'lam, Allah knows, but there is no materialistic proof unless you do action. So when Allah ya'lam means al-ilm is believing in something, knowing something is going to happen with a proof, with a materialistic proof. Adhan, believing in something without a materialistic proof. Shak, which is also means doubt, it is not believing in something without having a materialistic proof that it doesn't exist. So if you look at these words in the Quran, unfortunately, when you read it in fact, actually, people sometimes in translation they say dhan certain, but it is. Raiba has a shak also, that there is no doubt about it. But la raiba fi, it's negative, to remove any shak, any doubt about it. So anyway, so this is a moment everyone will pass through. One will pass through it in the sense that the soul will come here and nobody can help, and we know we're going to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but not in a way, it's not in a state of disbelief. But to everybody at that time, it's a helpless. There's no help for him from anybody. And this is a warning for because everybody knew that he's going to die. The 100% certainty that everybody is going to die. But somehow people forget about, ignore. Then the surah continued. We said the surah came in the beginning of it, came to talk about the resurrection is going to happen. And then even your fingerprint is going to be assembled also. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make at the end of it reinforce the opening statement about the reality of the resurrection. أَيَحْسَبُ الْإِنسَانُ أَنْ يُتْرَكَ سَدًا? Does man really think that he is going to be left unchecked, does whatever he does? We created him and we created everything, and now he's not going to be responsible for anything. أَلَمْ يَكُنْ نُطْفَةً? Then Allah reminded him, أَلَمْ يَكُنْ نُطْفَةً مِّن مَنِيٍّ يُمْنَىٰ? That wasn't he just a drop, which is a split out of sperm. ثم كان علقة. Allah talk about the level of creation now. ثم كان علقة فخلق فسوى, and then he became a clinging form which was created and made in due proportion. فجعل منه الزوجين الذكر والأنثى, and he made the zakar and the unsa. أليس ذلك? Look at this ayah. And frankly, first of all, what is the first ayah book in the Quran? That tell you the Quran is a book, amazing actually book. The first ayah that was revealed in the Quran, اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق. Allah created one from alaq. If you are a scientist, a biologist, an embryologist, a person who study, he will come and say, what is the alaq means? There is another insight. أَلَمْ يَكُ نُطْفَةً مِّن مَنِيٍّ يُمْنَىٰ. He was created from a sperm. And then Allah comes, فَجَعَلَ مِنْهُ الزَّوْجَيْنِ الذَّكَرَ وَالْأُنثَى. He made from it the male and the female. No. Who controls the sex? The man or the woman? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, it came from your sperm. From your sperm is going to come the male or the female. So don't blame the woman that you only have, have only males, have girls. No. And, isn't this ayah, you read it, and if you are saying, why Allah put it in this way? Because how are you going to develop a civilization unless you advance it in medicine? أليس ذلك بقدر. And if Allah does this, isn't he the one is not capable of bringing, the dead back, from the dead back to life, in this regard? So اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك اللهم لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا واصرف عنا شر ما قضيت فإنك ربنا تقضي بالحق ولا يقضى عليك. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم اجعلنا ممن يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه. اللهم اكفنا بحلالك عن حرامك وبطاعتك عن معصيتك وفضلك عمن سواك. اللهم بفضلك ورحمتك على كلمة الحق والدين. اللهم انصر الإسلام وعز المسلمين يا أكرم الأكرمين. Oh Allah, spread your mercy upon us. Shower us with your blessings increase our knowledge, grant us forgiveness, and reward us with the company of the prophets in the Firdaus al-A'la. Oh Allah, forgive our parents and all our friends and relatives who have passed away. Oh Allah, make their graves garden from heaven and grant them the Firdaus al-A'la. Oh Allah, we have many of our friends and relatives who are sick. Oh Allah, we have our brother Yusuf's son Ma'raj and his daughter, and our daughter Aisha Wani. Oh Allah, grant all of them full and speedy recovery. Oh Allah, guide our children, protect them, and make them righteous. Oh Allah, grant us the power and the ability that we may be grateful for the favor that you have bestowed upon us and our parents, and that we may do righteous deeds that are pleasing to you. Oh Allah, we seek from you all of the good, whether we know it or we don't. And we seek your refuge from all evil, whether we know it or we don't. Oh Allah, we have many of our brethren who are suffering oppression and injustice, particularly those in Palestine and in Yemen and Sudan and many other parts of the world, in Kashmir and many other parts of the world. Oh Allah, heal their trauma, protect their helpless, and grant them lasting peace and prosperity. Oh Allah, we ask you with every name you have elected for yourself, that none of us leave this gathering, but his pains have been relieved, his worries have been removed, his debts have been paid, his weaknesses have been concealed, his sins have been forgiven, and his needs have been fulfilled. Subhanallah wa bihamdih, عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.